All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome. It is Sunday, so back at it again, of course. Uh, got Oh Dear today. Hello. Welcome to the show.
Hello. Thank you
Hello.
for having me.
No problem. Thank you for accepting my offer. So,
Yeah, I had nothing to do.
you know what? Fair. Uh, I've got something to do on Sundays, but we're here, so it all works out. Anyway.
I usually have streaming to do, but this is
Mhm.
exactly my time slot, so it works out perfectly for me. And I get
Nice.
a day off from the grind.
I'm happy to support the well-deserved break, you know.
Thank you, thank you.
But yeah, welcome. Uh, how's it going?
Going pretty well. As I said,
It's good.
I had a day off. I'm fully relaxed. I'm looking forward to boring questions. I mean, boring,
Wait,
right?
hold on.
No, the other boring. English is difficult.
I understand. But yeah, all right. Um, so I know you're mainly known for Mario Land 2, which is a fun
You
game. I've
can,
I've dabbled.
yeah, you can call me one trick pony if you want. Yeah.
Hey,
No,
well,
it's what I have been doing most of my speedrunning career for sure,
mhm.
and still is to this day. I always like even if I switch to something else, I always in the end come back to it.
Yeah, you've always got to have that one game.
Hmm.
Mario 1's always going to be that one game for me, I'm sure. So it all
Yeah,
it happens to everyone, most likely.
and if you're bored of that, you just play a ROM hack of it.
You're right. I
I
don't know
I
if
don't
you
have
can get.
that
Yeah, I was gonna
opportunity.
say
No,
you probably
it's
don't have that luxury, but
Game Boy games, man.
yeah.
The communities are so small that you don't really get an active ROM hacking community.
Oh
And I
well.
think the possibilities are also they might be there, but it's usually tricky to realize with all of the restrictions that Game Boy games come with.
Yeah,
So and so many sprites on screen, this and that, and it's all super complicated if you try something. We do have a level editor, but making something that actually runs on a console with that is near impossible.
I bet. Yeah, it's crazy how like primitive the Game Boy is, but the games can still like be pretty decent, all things considered.
Yeah.
So yeah. Um, so I think the first thing to start off with is just how you got into the speedrunning.
Uh, Kind of in a roundabout way. So I first started. It was through Twitch, so there was no connection before. Well, maybe there was. This is a tiny, tiny tangent already before I even start. This must have been back in like 2000 and maybe even 19. No, it was 2000-ish, 2001. Um, when I was competing at home in Windows Solitaire, the Klondike Solitaire version, with my
Nice.
mom. And we would beat each other's times all the time, going for that like sub 60 seconds, I think, was or sub 100 seconds. I think that's more realistic for 2000 for me. Um, and at some point, the internet had just emerged. And at some point, I found out there's this one guy. I was looking up what's the fastest time known to man. And that's the first time I got in contact with the concept of speedrunning. So I found that Brazilian guy who had beaten Klondike Solitaire for Windows in like 60 or 50 seconds, something like that. Then long break to 2012 when I stumbled back upon Twitch, which I had watched some Justin TV for some Let's Plays before, like just while like during work or in breaks, just on the side. So I knew streaming existed, was nothing new, and I had just moved places, and I rediscovered online streaming services, Twitch in that case, and I think I was playing Dark Souls Prepare to Die edition on the PC at that time. Had just come out, yeah, 2011, 2012. That seems about right. And I was just watching, I just finished the game, so I was watching streams. And inevitably, I stumbled upon a speedrun stream as well. And liked what I saw. Community was nice. Was the first time I think that I even interacted with any online community in that kind.
Hmm.
So felt pretty welcomed. And actually, to this day, that is what I consider my home community on Twitch. Even though, spoilers, I would never actually actively go into Dark Souls speedrunning,
Hmm.
but the closeness to the people still stayed. Um, and from there on out, I just well, the world of speedrunning had opened up to me. I knew it was a thing. I knew it was organized. I knew Twitch was where it was happening live. So then I started looking for the games that I liked to see speedrun. And the next one that I stumbled upon was Super Metroid, or that I actively sought out. Um, I remember back in 2012 finding Cod Power's stream. Uh, Former world record holder in the game, just overall interesting personality. And I enjoyed his stream. He was a little bit I had a little bit of an alternative view on things going on in the world. So it was interesting at the same time, just for his personality as well. And Super Metroid had just been one of those games in like back in my childhood. I played it back when it came out, and it was just one of those games that really interested me just because of all of the openness of the game and all of the which I didn't really understand back then, but once you start watching speedruns, you understand just how versatile the mechanics, the controls are, and that just kept it interesting. And I learned more and more and more, and I wanted to eventually maybe do it myself, but I still kind of stayed on the viewer side of the speedrunning experience, and that's pretty much where it stayed for like the next 2-ish years, I want to say. That's that's my first contact with speedrunning as such.
Well, first contact was a long time ago then. If that
Yeah,
counts, of
it's
course.
that's pretty much, yeah, 12 years ago. It's been a while.
Oh, I meant like 20 years ago. That
Oh, you
solitaire is
mean
so
the
important, you know?
solitaire? Yes, of course. That opened my inner speedrunning eye and
Hmm.
made me susceptible. Yes, and I think I always had some knack for anything competitive. I have a younger sibling, and he's only 2 years younger than me, so we always used to compete in something,
Hmm.
either physical sports or video games at home. So I think that plays a role, like the way you grow up, the way you get imprinted with those things. I think that sets you up. It's not the
Hmm.
only factor, of course, but it's a nice groundwork that was laid back then.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, it definitely helps plant that seed to bloom later, I guess. So,
Yeah.
gotta have that competitive spirit for speedrunning. Really helps out.
For sure. I mean, I know people who can maintain a long speedrunning career without any real competitive like background or motivation behind it, where it's really just about the self-improvement, or just that they're wandering from game to game without really caring for most of the community aspect. That exists, and that's
Hmm.
valid too.
I see it
But
as being
for
competitive with
myself,
yourself, you know?
yeah, yeah. But yeah, like just for myself, also the like the inter-person competitiveness, I think that's just one more factor for motivating yourself. So I don't see it as anything negative.
Hmm.
Never have. As
Yeah.
long as you are not negative about it, or everything is fine, right?
Yeah. It's definitely a balance there somewhere.
Yeah,
But yeah, so I guess that leads into when you started doing your first like true speed runs.
yeah. So this one was also something that I mean, now I've kind of teasered it. So my first speedrunning venture was actually Super Metroid. It was not SML2 yet. And it also was more of an accident, so to speak. I was in this big Dark Souls streamers community. Was a more challenge run streamer, and one day he couldn't stream, and the community had already assembled this and that, and I just said, yeah, maybe I can stream something instead, so we don't wait for nothing. Or maybe he was about to come later, something like that. And throughout all of my interest that had built up for speedrunning during that time, I had already made the decision to get myself a console, because I am from Germany, and if you want to partake in speedrunning and be competitive eventually, you kind of need something that is not in the PAL standard that we
Mm-hmm.
have over here in most of Europe. Um, so that was a little bit of a like technical adventure, getting all of the things ready. I ordered a something here. So that's my first Super Famicom right here. I ordered that from a German user. So he also already had all of the adapters ready, so I didn't have to look into that myself. So I
Nice.
was all set up. Ordered original Super Metroid cartridge from Japan. Yeah, then set everything up. But I think I was playing. I don't remember what kind of TV that was. I had a TV that shouldn't have played the signal, but kind of did, but in black and white.
Oh.
And I had gotten myself a very cheap Dazzle capture card, the DVC 100.
Oh
Old
yeah.
people will still remember that one.
I've got
Wait,
one
did
behind
you?
me somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah, so I hooked all of that up and just streamed some speedrunning attempts for a completely different community who were not necessarily interested in what I was doing, but were just there to chat along while waiting for something else. That's also what kind of helped me clear that first hurdle of putting yourself out there. I think that was a not the easiest decision. It's not that I am necessarily shy or like too introverted or anything, but I feel like this step of putting yourself on the internet ready for everybody to see and judge, I think that took me some little push to get over. So that was that. And from that point onward, I just started streaming things casually every now and then, until one day a friend of mine asked me, I think it was from his side, the impetus, to maybe just do some casual races of games that we both played as children. And the very first thing we chose was Super Mario Land 2.
Mm.
Looked like an easy game. I vaguely remembered how it played from my childhood. I never had it myself. I always had to play it on like a friend's Game Boy in daycare back in elementary school. That's how I remember playing Super Mario Land 2. So I said, yeah, sure, sounds interesting. And I wrote down the date. It was June 26th in 2014 when we had that friendly, casual race between the two of us. And that's where my competitiveness kicked in eventually for real. Because I'm pretty sure I lost that race, which might play a role, might not. But I wanted to keep going. He also wanted to keep going, and for quite a while, I was always behind. We were playing on terrible setups. I was playing on an emulator, not a good one. If you know anything about Game Boy emulation, back in 2012 or 14, or we all know. The most prevalent emulator back then was VBA, Visual Boy Advance. Whenever you Googled Game Boy emulator, that one would come up. And that was notoriously inaccurate.
Mm.
The sound emulation was all over the place, and the thing would run at almost 60 FPS. It didn't emulate lag properly. So for speedrunning, not the greatest choice. But I even though I had been in the community for 2 years, I didn't really look into the specifics for Game Boy speedrunning at that point. I just assumed this is what I found, this is what I'm using, probably going to be all right. And I just did it for myself at first anyway, or against my friend, and not really for any leaderboards. Because in 14, I think speedrun.com wasn't even quite around yet. I think that was 2015.
Yeah, I think so.
So it didn't really matter that much at that point what I was playing on. Just had to be convenient and work for me. I was also playing on uh, a DualShock 2 controller with an adapter, which is not great for jump and run games at all. The D-pad is not great.
Mm.
It was old. It was icky. The circumstances were not great. I was also playing on my LCD TV. Didn't even have a dedicated monitor at that point. Like the entire console setup was specifically for Super Metroid at that point. I didn't have a SML2 cartridge. I didn't have the Super Game Boy 2. I had nothing. I had PAL stuff, but nothing that actually helped me streaming. So I just decided, okay, let's go with the emulator for a while. And I think it must have been until 2000, like beginning of 2015-ish, when speedrun.com was definitely around by then, because I tried submitting a run and then I slowly got into contact with the community, and someone told me, yeah, sorry, can't accept that run on that emulator. That's not how it works. So I was a bit down for like a day or so, and then decided that I like this hobby enough to keep pursuing it and keep investing into like a proper running setup, proper equipment. And I think it was around that time that I basically immediately ordered my Super Game Boy 2, got in contact with like the wider Game Boy speedrunning community to gather all of the knowledge that I had been missing out on for the last couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
And I still kept playing on emulator for a while, though. I think it just took a while to find or get the SGB2 delivered. So I think it was for about a year-ish still, or almost a year, that I still played on emulator, but then at least on an accurate one. So I could submit to leaderboards, and I slowly kept pushing the time down. I think at the time, I know at the time, the world record was held by Laplacier for the main category of SML2, which we nowadays refer to as just glitchless, sometimes any percent glitchless. Back in the day, sometimes any percent normal. There
Normal.
were different normals that came from Speedruns Live, I believe.
Mm.
Somebody didn't like what the community was naming things, so they just called it any percent in parentheses normal. Um,
I prefer any percent abnormal myself, but
yeah, exactly. That's what we should adopt for glitched categories. Um, Starting a trend right here.
mm.
Where was I? Oh, yeah, the emulator grind. So the world record at the time was 26:38. I had pretty much just missed the most active time in the game, which was 2012, 2013, when I was watching my Dark Souls streams.
Mm.
The SML2 speedrun really developed, really blew up with runners like Mag, Laplacier, Controller Head, Piraeus. Those were the four big ones at the time who kept trading world records and pushing the time down. After, I think I found the old SDA forum thread at some point, and the old thread had just lay dormant for like 7 years or so, while somebody submitted a run and then nothing happened for quite a while, and then suddenly this explosion happens. Very likely helped with the advent of Twitch and live streaming. So that was the environment that I started getting into. Those runners had just all stepped down. The world record was deemed pretty much unbeatable,
Hmm.
and everybody who had been in that race, they had just stopped, given up in a way. The world record holder himself had kind of moved on, uh, and that seemed to have been it for SML2. And I was just there silently, uh, improving my own times, getting slower, getting lower and lower. Um, Not even on Twitch at the time. I don't know. Were you around in like 2014-ish, 15-ish on Twitch?
I
There
joined
was
around
this
2017 myself, so
yeah,
yeah.
so the hashtag remove horror will not tell you anything. There
No.
was some Twitch employee drama,
Mm,
and people started looking for different platforms. I also was one of those people who, for maybe half a year, maybe close to a year, during that time, just switched to the platform back then called Hitbox,
mm,
um, which in a way was nice. It felt independent. It had ridiculously low latency. That was the main reason. And since my community on Twitch was small anyway, I was streaming for like 5 viewers. I didn't really mind just taking those 5 people over with me. And didn't care too much. Again, like the active runners weren't there anyway at the time, so there was nothing I was losing out on. And that kind of at some point I did realize I maybe want to like reconnect with the wider speedrunning community or attract more viewers, because on Hitbox everything was staying the same and they had their own little issues. And so I went back to Twitch. And that was around the time when I was grinding really hard for the big milestone in the category, which is the sub 27. To this day, that is still the magic barrier in the game. If you get sub 27, you feel like you've achieved something.
it's the
And
final minute barrier, right?
correct.
Yeah.
And I was just stuck there for weeks on end. Until that point, everything had been going swimmingly. Times had been coming down every week, pretty much just a couple of seconds here and there. And I was almost there, also 22 seconds away from the world record at that point. So that's when you start thinking maybe there's something possible. And that is also when I finally got the Super Game Boy 2 and got my full console set up. Still had the problem with the TV at the point. So I,
Hey,
I
that works
looked
out for Game
around.
Boy though, right? Because it's black and white anyway.
It did, but I think that TV had completely broken down by that point. And I wanted to get
Oh well.
something good, something better. I was still in contact with the Super Metroid community at that point as well. Also more on a like from a bystander perspective. But some people had some good technical advice on what to get, how to capture things, like all of those technical things. I got fed by the Super Metroid community. So I ended up, I have something here, a little bigger than the console, but not super big. So
Oh
this is
my.
my first TV, my first PVM that I got for specific for speedrunning. 9-inch. Um, it was enough at the time. Uh, it's kind of broken down. The signal isn't great either, but it did the job. So that was what I was playing on from then on until I upgraded way later. And once the console grind started, I want to say in early 2015. Actually, I do have some cheat sheet prepared, so I know exactly what happened when. Yeah, that was 2015, early 2015. um, so the console setup was there. Everything was different. Before, when I was playing on my LCD screen, I was playing with a quarter second of input delay.
Oh god.
I'm not exaggerating at all. It was 0.25 seconds, measured it several times, and I had gotten used to that.
Mm-hmm.
I had gotten to where I was with that setup, which kind of tells you, like, if somebody complains about this console thing, the setup has a second or 1 frame of latency, it's usually not that bad. Your brain can get used to those things.
Yeah.
Um,
I probably, when I started, had about the same amount of input lag. But
yeah,
I will say, when I switched to like console with no input lag, I suddenly became really good very quickly. So I think there is a little bit of a like
for sure. Yes. Yeah.
disadvantage to it, even if you're used to it.
Yeah. Like if it's something that is more reactive
Mm-hmm.
than just doing your daily routine, then for sure. In general, it's nice to have. If you have the choice, always go for no lag,
Mm-hmm.
no input delay. But yeah, once I had that set up, I I also like it even motivates you more. I got all of this stuff now. Now I have to make use of it. Now I have to get better for real, and that really pushed me. And by the end of 2015, I had pushed my time down to pretty much world record contention, and just kept. I think I kept pushing for a while and couldn't really get it. So I just took my mind off and just switched to actually committing to Super Metroid at that point. Because again, also I had this nice setup for the first time. Why not also use it for Super Metroid? So that was a little just to take my mind off the extreme grind that I was going on in Super Mario Land 2. So some Super Metroid speedrunning for a couple of months. Finished my first runs, learned some proper speedrunning strats. Um, just things like that. Got I don't know what kind of time I got, like mid 1 hour, like 65 minutes or so. So nothing crazy yet, but I felt accomplished, whereas I didn't feel accomplished for a while in Mario Land 2 with being stuck. Um, but yeah, once I came back, some of the original community had also come back. The world record holder was a common viewer in my chat. Controller had come back. Was even streaming attempts himself again. So this community feeling had also come back, which helped motivating me. And it was later that year, later 2015. When exactly was that? November 2015, when I beat the unbeatable world record by 0.3 seconds. That was a very nice achievement, and yeah, that was the end of chapter 1 pretty much. That is how I established being the SML2 guy. That's how it came to be.
World record get.
Yeah, it was a grind though, and again, sometimes you really have to just put your mind off the thing and come back later with a cleared up mindset. That's just what I needed during that time.
No, it worked out.
Yeah.
So, chapter 2, I guess.
Chapter 2, what's coming next? Yeah. Uh, I think that was around the time when I then also came back to, or went back to Super Metroid and went for that like hour milestone, sub hour. I think I got that somewhat quickly. And then while I was grinding for the SML2 world record, that pulls in some community, right? Something is
Mhm.
going on, people start watching the game, and some people start running the game as well. And there was this one French speedrunner, Shoryu Piff, who came from the fighting game community and also just seemed to have a knack for SML2 and an interest in speedrunning it, and picked it up very quickly and within a couple of months, actually, like he was doing runs the same time that I was, and I got the record in November, and in December he beat my world record, my world record. It's
Well,
what I was feeling at the time.
yeah,
It's,
that's quick.
that was quick, especially after this like long break of this world record is hard to beat or unbeatable or whatever. And then one guy comes along, beats it, another next guy comes along, beats it even further. So that just shows you that you just need activity in your communities and things become possible. So I was immediately motivated. I had achieved my sub-hour Super Metroid thing and immediately went back to the SML2 grind. And it was around, I think, just before Christmas uh, in 2015, like one day before I was off to my parents to celebrate Christmas, that I did uh, get the record back. I think by quite a margin at that point. It was so the 2638 had stood for 2 years ish. Then I beat it by 0.3. I think Shoryu beat me by 0.1 or so. And the next step was that I beat Shoryu's PB by almost 4 seconds, which was
Hmm.
I rewatched the run because I thought I would have been like more surprised or would have been more shocking by how much that was, but at the time it didn't seem too crazy. Apparently, like it had already the potential had already been there. You just had to get one of those runs through where you don't make the mistakes, and that was just that one run where with the strats that we had at the time, I just got one through, and yeah, that kind of cemented that world record for a while then. And that's when I started branching out to different categories of the game. There had been a very I think any percent had stood for even longer, like since 2012. Mark, one of the early runners, and Tarsus had figured out a humanly viable any percent route. That's the glitched one where you go into the out of bounds, into all of that glitchy mess, and pretty much destroy a block, and that block represents a flag that triggers the credits. That is the any percent category in SML2. Back at the time, the world record stood at 3 minutes 41, and that one had not been touched. Some people had tried learning the route for like showcasing it at a marathon, but nobody was really going for beating that time. It was considered just a very unreliable run because of what was going on in the out of bounds area. Because what you see there is not actually what is there. The game tries its best to interpret the memory values with tile entities that it knows in the level context, but the interactions with your character are not necessarily intuitive. So learning that run was very daunting, and I was mostly practicing on a ridiculously inaccurate emulator on my Nintendo DS Lite.
Mm.
The emulator was called Same Boy. There was no lag whatsoever. The out of bounds area was emulated completely wrong, but I still kept using it just because it was a handheld and I could just take it with me and just play around in the game, not really necessarily try to find anything specifically for the speedrun, but just play around with the game, see how it behaves. And luckily, one of the things that I found by just playing around actually translated to the actual any percent run, which was that in one transition where you traverse that glitchy mess through a pipe for a bit, if you let go of the D-pad during that or held a different direction, you would traverse that pipe way further than the world record at the time did, which saved a tremendous amount of time. So I had discovered that, and then I made the decision with that world record grinding should be just a matter of perseverance and not getting frustrated by all of the rest, the glitchy mess around. And it didn't take me too long to beat that long-standing world record and kind of develop or establish a new meta in any percent, because by running it so often, you figure out, okay, this seems all super random, but it still is predictable enough to do proper runs. So we understood, like the community understood the game much better at that point. Slash Infinity, another runner from our community, picked up specifically the any percent category for a 12-hour challenge and learned it. And within a couple of weeks, he was in contention for the world record as well. Got it several times during that time. Like we were trading back and forth. The squirrel was another one during that time. So the three of us kept pushing the limits of the category. And in that battle also kept going for tighter and tighter strategies there. So if you know the category, there is the underlying glitch that you have to use, the pipe glitch, where in version 1.0 of the game, if you don't know how to figure out what version your Game Boy cartridge is, if you hold the cartridge a little bit against the light, you can see somewhere on the cover sticker there's an imprint, like a physical stamp mark. If that one has a number followed by a letter, that is usually a revision cartridge. So let's say 26A or 26 or 37B. A stands for version 1.1, B 1.2. With other games, there could be more revisions, but that's how you tell. So to do the glitch category, you need the original version 1.0, which doesn't have any letters in that imprint. And in that, you can do the pipe glitch, which if you have cleared a level before, you go down a pipe, and before leaving the pipe, you pause, and by pressing select, you leave the level. With that pipe state, or Mario is in a pipe state still being active, then you enter a new level, and Mario will go down a non-existing pipe and fall through the floor into the memory of the game. That's the basic principle of any percent. And there's an alternative way to going down that pipe. The problem with the pipe is you have to clear the level before you can do the pipe glitch, which takes time. Not good for speedrunning. But the overall concept of the pipe glitch is more like a general carry-over glitch. Whenever something happens on the same frame as something else, the game gets confused. One of my favorite speedrunning phrases of all time. I will keep using it until I die. And the game gets confused in a way that it thinks the state that was changed when something else changed remains. It doesn't get updated anymore. You can do that with grabbing power-ups. So you're grabbing an invincibility star, the exact frame, you grab it, you quit out of the level. You start the next level, you will have invincibility starting the level. Things like that. And the same thing applies to dying, because dying is just another way of leaving a level, right? That's a way to look at it. So if you go down a pipe and die on the very same frame, you can have the same effect. You also get a pipe glitch. And you can set that up in the very first level, which cuts down the overall time by half a minute already. Then you also cut down clearing the level where you set up the actual credits glitch by setting up the exact same pipe death glitch in a different level, where you from where you take the glitch along to the final destination and fall through the floor and hit a specific tile on the top layer of all of that mess that clears the level, and then you go back in and go down and reach the actual trigger block for the credits. And the big change here was that we implemented those 2 frame perfect death glitches into the run, just saving like a minute at least of potential right then and there. And we kept pushing the time down and down until at some point, I think it was the squirrel got a good one that stood for a while, like a 2:46, which is now almost a minute below the initial one by Mark. And quite a while later, I got a 2:42, which at the time was just a really good run. There's some more frame perfect stuff in it while going through the block soup,
Hmm.
and that I got pretty quickly, and everything just came together. So that category was kind of dead from there on for a while. It's not any more spoilers.
Yeah. Yeah, that game's always
Things
been
happen. So
interesting. The way it like it's any percent. It's something you don't see a lot where you traverse like the game interpreting memory as like a physical
yeah,
level thing. It's just so cool. I don't know. You don't
yeah.
see many things like that. But yeah.
I don't know if it's specific to how Game Boy does things, or if it's really just very game specific. Because I know you can also go out of bounds in Wario Land, which technically has the same game engine as SML2, but you cannot do anything like that. So it might be
Hmm.
specific to SML2.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad it's unique
Yeah.
because that's there's just something really cool about that, and you don't see
Yes.
that anywhere else. So
Yeah. Like even it even got that one IGN article written about it,
did
which
it?
was absolutely yeah. I think it was after it was showcased by Taspot at a GDQ
Mm,
that IGN got wind of the thing
of course, yeah.
and covered it. Of course, they got everything wrong about
No,
it,
of
but
course, yeah. As
that's
all
IGN
gaming
for you.
journalists do. Very important.
Sadly, yeah. Yep. Nobody's ever consulted from the community. They just make up their own mind. What could this mean? That's how articles happen in
Yeah.
gaming journalism. So yeah, that was the any percent part. I think we're still in 2015 at that point, or are we?
Oh, that all happened very quickly, huh?
Oh no, that's 2016. That is all of 2016.
All right.
Apologies. Yeah. Yeah, then there was some other categories that I wanted to try in the game. Like the other main category was all levels, where there was a single run on the leaderboard, I believe.
Only one? Wow.
Only one, also by Mug. I think it was still because speedrun.com was still so new, and the community had pretty much disassembled right before speedrun.com had become a thing, and only now everything was coming back together. So it kind of makes sense to me that there was not a lot of like the leaderboards weren't filled yet. For example, I had to like way later, I had to dig through some old Japanese forums
Mm,
to like complete the leaderboards with the things that were already out there, just not part of the wider speedrunning community. Um, yeah, but that took some active effort to actually do that. And at the time, it's a Game Boy game. That's
mhm.
sadly the fate of most generally small games, and many Game Boys, many Game Boy games in the speedrunning context are small games. You don't have big communities. If you want something done, you have to do it yourself, pretty much. So I wanted to get like the category sweep, so to speak, at the time,
Yeah.
and wanted that uh, the all levels world record. It took me, I think, a week or so. Like the old one wasn't super optimized. Nobody ever claimed it was,
Mhm.
and I was coming off some practice. I had some experience gained in the game, so it wasn't too difficult at that point to improve that year-old outdated world record. There was also uh, the small Mario only unofficial category,
Hmm.
which was just kind of it's the hardest category in the game, just in terms of you cannot die, otherwise your run is over. It's just too big a time loss. And controller head was grinding that back in the day and going for sub 30. So I was racing him for that. Pretty sure he got it first. But then I also came back to that eventually and improved that time a little bit. And I think that was it for a while for me with SML2. And then after I had beaten that old all levels world record by Mark, Mark also kind of was, he came back at least as a viewer, and he he kept like needling and trolling me, and he's just a meme lord pretty much. So he said, something must have gone wrong, but you will never beat my Super Mario Land 1 time. So I was motivated to prove him wrong. I don't like. I shouldn't say it like that. I do like Super Mario Land 1 on a casual basis. I technically also like the speedrun, but the learning curve was an experience that I don't want to repeat ever. The physics are not great in that game. Everything is very unintuitive. I think they tried to go for a similar feel as Super Mario Bros. 1, but just forgot some
It
things, I
wasn't
suppose.
right at all.
It really wasn't right. Like the acceleration is instant. Mario comes to a stop completely instantly. He unintuitively cannot be controlled mid-air sometimes, but other times he can. We understand all of those things now, but it's just like coming from a different game where you expect your like response, just a good response of your character at all times. That was just jarring. But we had that bet. I had that bet with Mark that I'm gonna beat his PB, which was a 12:44, I believe, at the time. Former world record. Current world record at the time was a 12:36 by the Tekken. And so I just wanted to beat Mark's time, pretty much. I picked up the game for the 12-hour challenge that was going on at the same time, so that was convenient. I could just had an excuse that was not I want to beat Mark's time, but I just want to learn this game. And I kept grinding that for a while, and I don't quite remember how long it took, but I did definitely beat Mark's time at some point. But at that point, I was also hooked because I was less than 10 seconds away from the world record. So I wanted to keep pushing that. During that time, I had also, with the world records in SML2, I kind of made a small name for myself and was trying to get into some online marathons here and there. And in the middle of that SML1 grind was this is 2016 still, was the California Wildfire Relief Marathon going on. And I had submitted Super Mario Land 2. So right before that was about to happen, right before the marathon run, I was doing some casual warm-up and had been playing nothing but SML1 for weeks. Do one D-Rust run of SML2, went all right, had enough time for another one, did another D-Rust run. That one, surprisingly, was a world record. I was completely shocked. Preparing for a marathon, wasn't expecting anything, wasn't grinding, really purely D-Rust. And I improved the world record by another second or so. That's always something I look back on fondly, just as a ridiculous experience, because I had no expectations. I was running splits, but for I think until the marathon was over and until I got to check my recording, I still thought I had done something wrong with my splits. I could not imagine that I just did that with all of the grinding beforehand. Everything just needed effort, and on this particular day, there was no effort involved at all, and it just worked. That didn't make sense to me. So that was pretty cool. During the same time, I picked up another game from my childhood, which nobody has ever heard of. I mean, I guess some people have heard of the NES game A Boy and His Blob,
Mhm.
but there is actually a Game Boy version called Rescue of Princess Blobette, which I have a lot of nostalgia for because it came with my Game Boy bundle back in the early 90s.
Hmm.
So it was one of the very first games that I ever played on Game Boy. So I saw that that one had a submitted speedrun, and I had the game. So I thought, okay, let's try where I can get. And I think it took one day to get the world record in that one, which wasn't super optimized at the time. Uh, but still, it took some memorization. It's a very glitchy game. Uh, you also it's a 2 minute run, so
Hmm.
not a lot to learn technically. So it's easily fittable into one day. So that was that, and then I just went straight back to the Super Mario Land 1 grind. I think that goes well into 2017, uh, where I had one run that was on world record pace until the very last bonus game. So in Super Mario Land 1, you have 3 bonus games at the end of each stage, except the very last one, which is basically random for all intents and purposes, and you can lose up to 3.5 seconds in one of those bonus games. So I get to the very last of those bonus games on record pace by half a second or so, and I get the worst outcome. I get the full 3.5 seconds bonus game
Is that like
baggage, and
ladder at plus 3 lives?
that is ladder 3,
Uh,
correct. And yeah, I still got a PB in that run, and at that point I just thought to myself, nah, this is not my speed game. This is not it. So I just let go. I think no, I didn't immediately let go. I had submitted. So this is 2017. So I'm from Germany. It's kind of hard and expensive for me to get to a GDQ. So the best thing that we have is ESA. But I really wanted to go to an in-person marathon, meet all of those people, like the Dark Souls community, my home community, some Super Metroid community members. I really wanted to go there. So I also submitted some runs. I made the big mistake to submit both SML1 and SML2. And the game selection committee made the big mistake to accept both and
oh.
put them back to back on the schedule. So
Uh-oh.
that, yep.
Here's a bad game,
Uh,
and here's a good game.
Not only that, but they control completely differently. And
Yeah.
it is not easy to go back between those two games. At least for me, it's not. But what was I about to do? So July 2017, my first on-site marathon. The SML1 run went kind of okay. The SML2 run was a bit rough, I believe.
Mm.
Not terrible, but rough. But it was an experience. I learned something. Uh, I also learned that I'm just not multitasking able pretty much. I cannot keep two things or two like projects like that in my head at the same time. Um, but yeah, it was fun, and that then finally ended the Super Mario Land 1 chapter for me for good. Never touched the game again since then.
Really?
Well, not technically true. I did some research in it. I was trying to figure out the bonus game for others. I remember Darbian picked up the game at some point, and I was just trying to like figure out some setups that could be easier. There is a glitch in the game where if you grab an invincibility star and the end of the fanfare coincides with a specific note of the level soundtrack, the game will just freeze. It's just a hard crash. and we didn't know about that before, so we did some research and figured out that that is the reason. Um, some setups for one of the screen wrap glitches didn't really have a good tutorial or a good setup, so I made things like that. But then I really put it aside and just watched other people do runs. To this very day, still an active game to this day. People are grinding for like the last couple of tenths in that game as we speak.
Last couple of tests.
Yeah, it's pretty much figured out. The You can at least try to manipulate the first bonus game by playing frame perfectly and starting the console on a certain frame. You can get into like a good cluster that will give you the one up or the fire flower.
Hmm.
Uh, and after that, people are just more willing to reset these days. So
Hmm.
when they get a bad bonus game, immediately start over. It's just a matured speed game, and it's at that point where that is just what you need to do. Just grind out RNG.
Yeah, crazy how
Yeah.
optimized it is. But so is a lot of quick 2D Marios, so can't be too
Hmm.
shocked. But yeah,
Yeah. Like
that
especially
RNG
the
is annoying.
short-ish ones. Yeah.
Yeah.
But even in the very short ones, even like you can probably tell stories about the developments in SMB1 over the last couple of years, where
Oh
people
yeah.
just keep finding those last couple of frame rules here and there.
Mhm. Well, we've known about every frame rule for like 20 years, but
Yeah, but
maybe not
yeah,
that long,
making
but
them viable. Yeah, yeah,
yes, now they're all just viable-ish
correct. And
for some
also
people.
at the same time, people are more willing to
Mhm.
suffer. Yeah, and it's just what is needed if you want to improve. There's no way around it.
Unfortunate, but true.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, also 2017. I saw on my cheat sheet what was a big year, and that was the 25-year anniversary of Super Mario Land 2.
Mm.
And since I had built this little community, I made a Discord server for the speedrunning community of the game, just gathered a couple of people. Um, I wanted to like present something special on that date, so I came up with all kinds of different like miscellaneous categories. Other games have their random categories. Super Mario Land 2 didn't have any. So I just thought what could be interesting, what could be nice to speedrun. And there were like 5 categories. So that also included the small Mario only category that was already established but didn't really have a place in the big 3 categories, any percent glitchless and all levels. And I just wanted to give it a little bit of company
Mm.
down there in the other categories. So we had things like a pacifist run, uh, getting 999 coins as quickly as possible. Um, the opposite, getting as little coins as possible
Mm.
through the run. No running. Is that probably forgetting something? But yeah, those kinds of things. And I ran them all back to back to kind of introduce them to the community and maybe garner some interest. Maybe people would pick up some of the categories for fun. And maybe in the future, if enough people run them, we can put them on official leaderboards to just make the game more of like you want to present something where anybody can find something for their liking and not just are stuck to the 3 big categories or so. Because a lot of people don't have that super competitive mindset and just want to have fun with something that they find fun. And if something like that has leaderboards at the same time, it's even better. So that was my thought behind that. And it was a very fun stream. And eventually, like a year later or so, the categories were actually introduced on speedrun.com, and now there's quite some optimization going on in those. It's nice to see that people like them, pick them up. Yeah. So that's all the way through 2017, pretty much. Um, 2018, I have written down F1 Race, another one of my childhood games. Uh, a a F1 Race exists for the NES, but there's also a version, a completely different game for the Game Boy, and I loved playing that as a kid. And it wasn't represented on speedrun.com at the time because most people were just doing the ILs, which just use in-game time, and there were external leaderboards, twin galaxies, and what have you. But nobody did a like there's a Grand Prix mode, and nobody did do one of those. Nobody had ever done one of those before. So I just wanted to kickstart that one. So I did some runs, submitted that to speedrun.com, and category got established. And nowadays there are like 3, 4 people who have joined the fun. Most people still just submit ILs, which is what you would expect in a like simplistic racing game, where you don't need any recording software. Like we just accept. I mean, some recording we still need, but you don't even have to run on anything accurate for the purposes of the IL, because that doesn't matter for the purpose of the. As long as we use in-game time, that's what I'm trying to say. It doesn't really matter whether the console runs at 60 FPS or 59.7. For the RTA category, however, that is a bigger hurdle, so way less people are on that leaderboard. So yeah, that was part of 2018. There was another ESA that I went to, submitted a run for. This time we did a race of the glitchless category, which was very well received. And it was also fun. It was the first time that I wasn't the only person at the marathon. I mean, it was my second marathon anyway, but also in any kind of marathon setting, I wasn't the only person presenting the game, that I had somebody besides me, which was a late learner at the time, who it was a nice setup. It was ranking number 1 versus number 2 at the time, so it couldn't have been a better race setup. There's only one more thing that I noted down for 2018, which is another of those miscellaneous categories. So the any percent category is, as we've established earlier, is drastically different from the normal run. It's ridiculously short, and it makes use of all the glitches that are available to humans, at least. But we didn't have anything that was like resembling no major glitches. So Slash Infinity was the driving force behind that. One of the runners who was in the any percent race earlier, like a couple of years before. And so we came up with categories where we basically allow everything except for triggering that credits flag in the out of bounds area. So you can still go out of bounds and trigger level exits, for example. You can still carry power-ups from one level to the other. You can skip parts of the level by in the game there are checkpoint bells in the middle of levels. If you do the like 1 frame carryover glitch that I mentioned earlier, you can carry the save state or the checkpoint state to a different level and skip the first part of it. Those things are all allowed in that one. Want to have a guess where the bell glitch is applied? What level it is used for?
I assume like long auto scrollers to skip most of that waiting. But
yeah, how many long auto scrollers do you remember? Don't want to put you on the spot. It's Space 2.
It's Space
It's
2. I see.
the very long one.
It's the Star Song.
It's the Star Song.
Of course.
The Beep Star Song. Yeah, and conveniently, the checkpoint bell is placed very close to the end in that level. So you're actually skipping a lot because it needs some time to set up. You have to complete the Space 1 stage first, go back to the bell, and then set up the glitch. And then you can carry it to the next level. But you still have to die, so it's still not done. Like the setup is still not done. Then you have to die as quickly as possible, and then when you respawn at the bell. For anybody who wants to try it out at home, that's how it works. Yeah, I think after that, I also did some runs in that. I think I ended up with the fastest time for a while. And then there was not that much activity for a bit, I believe. I started mostly playing Super Metroid for just improving, and I just find it's a very fun game to practice. Like not even outside of runs, just the practice alone is super fun to me. I started joining Super Metroid randomizer races and the randomizer league back in that day.
I did have a question about
Yeah,
the no major glitches category. How
yeah.
much faster is that over the glitchless category?
The route that we had at the time was about 2 minutes faster, but
Only 2 minutes. Wow.
we couldn't go for certain things that we wanted to for the lack of setups. Nowadays, it is about 4 minutes faster, and I think it's still not optimized. Elecman in your chat has the current record. He will probably be able to say what the potential of the category is. We also found out something very interesting. Or we kind of had to change the rules for this particular category. Traditionally, all of the rule sets, all of the timing rule sets started with timing starts when Mario enters the pipe on the menu screen. However, in version 1.0 of the game, is another of those 1.0 exclusive things. You can, if you press a certain button combination, like when the game just idles for a while, it shows you some demos of certain levels. If you press a certain button combination, you can enter those levels and just play them in demo mode, so to speak. And interestingly enough, you can complete one of those stages in demo mode. Usually it only allows you 255 inputs. That's what they programmed it with. That's how big the memory for every single of the demo stages is. So everything past that will just reset back to the menu screen. However, if you play clean enough, you can actually make it through an entire stage, then reset, come back into the game, and you're at that point then. So you're skipping the intro level pretty much. And that is what the Beat Wario category makes use of. So that's another one of those time saves that in like the 2-minute time save version wasn't there yet, but then Elecman looked into it and found out that it's
no major glitches. Just to
correct.
Sure. Okay,
yeah.
Got it.
It has glitches, just not the big one. Just not the one that specifically triggers the credits. Yes. Everything else is allowed.
Honestly, with the amount of like out of bounds skips, I thought it would be a lot faster, but I mean, I'm not fully aware of how fast it is.
Yeah, no, I mean, you're right. You would think that. The problem is you always have to set up the glitch. And for that, you have to go to a level where that is possible, which always takes time. Then you have the zone transition in and out. And that's the point where we don't even go for certain of those level skips, even though we know the setups. But they would just barely be slower because of all the way back and forth.
Because can't you with that glitch, like, you fall at the beginning of the level and then you can like kind of go left and hit the goal or something?
Even easier. You in some levels you fall onto that like glitched representation of memory, and on the very top of that layer, there are actually level clear triggers. So you just fall
Oh,
onto it, and if you know what you do, you clear the level just like that. You don't even have to enter any
you don't have to
physical exit.
navigate. I see.
Yeah,
Wow,
that is
convenient.
the version that you describe is the one that is done in any percent in the very first stage,
Yeah.
where you take a death on the very same frame as you enter a pipe, then you go back into the level, fall, and you hold left to, yes, exactly how you described it, to clear the level border, and it just wraps around, and
Hmm.
you actually exit through the. It's a copy. It's still, you fall down into a copy of the level. I don't know why it is coded that way. It must have a purpose, but basically every level has its normal representation with enemies and sprites, and below that is a copy without any of those, just the tiles. And that's the one that you fall onto and then clear the level in the any percent category in the very first level.
Just a funny broken game.
Yeah.
But
Lekman mentions the potential for the Beat Warrior category is low 22, so it's
a solid
not.
4 minutes faster than
Yeah,
glitchless.
and it's also means that it's not that unoptimized currently. It
Hmm.
has a pretty good run. Is what I'm reading there.
Sounds good.
Yeah,
Yeah, that sounds like a fun category because you either
it's, yes,
get no
fun,
glitches or
fun,
you skip to the end. So it's nice to have that. Here's like just a bunch of glitches.
but fun asterisk,
Well,
because
sorry for the
there's a
viewer. For the viewer.
for the yes. The thing
My
is,
bad.
there are frame perfect things involved still, and not so much anymore than in the older strat. Elecman's strat is quite a bit better, I want to say, than the old one, which was relying on a frame perfect trick 9 minutes into the run. If you
Mm,
didn't get it, the run was completely over.
I see.
So
Well,
it's more approachable now. If anybody out there wants to give it a try, feel free.
yeah, should be fun. No asterisks involved. Um, so I guess we can just go back to the timeline of events.
Yeah. So timeline wise, that is now we're 2019, which was somewhat of a laid back year for me. I did some Super Metroid just for myself. I got a VR headset. I
Hmm,
started playing Beat Saber, which I still love doing all the time, completely unrelated to speedrunning. But when I don't feel like streaming a speedrun, I just put on Beat Saber, stream that.
I love
That's
some Beat
my,
Saber.
yeah, it's my getaway. It's my happy place.
Mhm.
I also started playing and also speedrunning Game Boy Tetris, I think around that time, maybe a little bit earlier. Um, I've always liked playing Tetris, and the speed run for it is not like super interesting. It's really just how do you stack and where do you clear your lines? How fast do you choose your line fall speed, and then be efficient with Tetrises so you don't have any additional line clear animations because those take time. That's pretty straightforward. Um, but I just enjoy the personal grind. I don't think I'm good enough to ever compete for world record in any Tetris game, but that's where the like general self improvement aspect for motivation comes in for me. And I think it's also important to just know your limits. You can't just apply any mindset that comes from a different game to something completely different. It might not work out that way. So that's something I had to learn to accept. For I think it came quite natural to me. So yeah, that was 2019. I did participate in ESA that year. I didn't submit any runs because I wasn't doing anything actively. So that would have felt odd to. It just didn't feel like even trying. So I just enjoyed the community aspect, enjoyed socializing, and that was 2019. 2020 was a very, very interesting year. Very big year for Super Mario Land 2 speedrunning. I had just also more out of just general research interest. I wanted to revisit certain things that we thought we knew about, but they had only been handed down. It was like this second, third generation knowledge, and nobody had really questioned things like which strat in what room is the most lag reducing one, things like that. So I went through the entire game, analyzing lag back and forth with all kinds of different setups, and came up with a couple of new ones. Just finding things that we just thought were a fact, and then the first time you look at them, you find out there's always something else to find if you look closely enough. And while I was doing that, Darbian picked up the game, and as in many other games, there was a very strong Darbian effect.
Yeah.
Very, very strong. Like suddenly, this community that was averaging, like whenever somebody was doing attempts, was averaging between 5 and 35 viewers on Twitch. Suddenly, 1,000 people had their eyes on the game, and that just opened up a lot of opportunities for us as a community. We were approached by somebody from Darbian's stream, one of his viewers, who liked dabbling in ROM hacking and just going through Game Boy code as a hobby. And within a couple of weeks, we had a practice ROM for the very first time, which is crazy in the context of a Game Boy speedrunning community. You never have any tools. Like, you're always this small side community. Pokemon was different. As a Game Boy game, they had all kinds of tools, but you weren't even expecting it. If you didn't have anybody in your community who could do those things, who was fluent in Z80 ASM coding, which I want to point out, only few people are keen on doing that. Yeah, you just don't have those tools available, and suddenly we had that. Which, if you have a proper practice ROM, I had already learned that from Super Metroid. Your practice gets so much more streamlined, so much more efficient. You can just focus on the things that matter instead of always I need this power up, now I have to go back to that level to try this again. It just, or you go back to emulator for practicing, but that's also, like, for some people that might not be an option because it feels different again. So the practice ROM was a gigantic leap for the entire community, and is to this day most important tool that we have.
Yeah, practice ROMs are essential. They're
Yeah.
so helpful.
And again, with so many eyes on the game, all of a sudden there was a lot of influx of ideas as well. So things that I was blind to, because I had been running the game at that point for 6 years already. At some point, you stop looking at certain things; you just take them for granted. And having all of those fresh eyes on the game was really rejuvenating for the entire community, and for, excuse me, yeah, just bringing new ideas into the game. Like, Darbian's community has influxes from all kinds of other games. Darwin himself has a pretty good mind for like finding strategies, finding those tiny little last time saves. So a lot of influx, a lot of good ideas just led to strategy inflation pretty much. So the record at the time at that point could not stand for that much longer. That was so certain at that point with all of these advancements. So I also got sucked back into running the game. And that was just like in my speedrunning career the craziest time, those couple of months in 2020, like May to November, December, where 4 people at the same time, like like in the back like back in the olden days, in those 2013 days, in the pioneer days where several people were running at the same time, we suddenly had this situation again with 4 people competing for the world record. Technically 5 even if you count one Japanese runner. So it was Darbian, I Love Mario, Adam Ferrari, myself, and Ape25, who at the time I think had the Super Mario Land 1 world record and also dabbled in SML2. So all of us were contenders for the world record at the same time, which for the wide community was just great. Like you always had somebody to watch who was currently going for world record attempts. And we also kept, like, it was also eventful in the way that we actually kept getting those world records. It was going back and forth. Darby and myself. I'm not sure if ILM ever had the record or if he made it. If he only made it to number 2, he might have had it shortly. I should know this, but I don't. You have to do the fact checking yourself at home. And then Adam Ferrari took it away at the end of that year for the foreseeable future at that time, because he just got a time that seemed again like that could be the limit now. So after a lot of activity for many months, it came to an end like it had before, where people just thought, okay, maybe that's it now. Maybe any percent glitchless or glitchless is dead, as communities like to say.
But they keep getting proven wrong whenever they say that.
They keep yes. That's how it works. That's the meme. So if you want your game to thrive, just say that, and it will definitely be proven wrong. But yeah, for myself, that definitely, like, I think I struggled a little bit with keeping up the activity, because I came from this laid back year of 2019, was thrown into this thing, and really enjoyed that. But I think it kind of burned me out. I would say technically I was just before actually burning out when I took my break, just to stay sane. Because at that point I was 4 seconds away from the record, and I could see myself improving, but on a very, very, very good run, I could come close to that time back then. I didn't see myself beating it back in those days. Yeah, that was 2020 into 2021, where I just took my first longer break, just more laid back, even less streaming, if at all, than Tetris or Beat Saber. And yeah, I think some Super Metroid here and there, but nothing really competitive. That's the part that I really needed a break from. And then the interesting part during all of the time was, though, like the aftermath, where the community grew like crazy. So there was a lot of influx from all kinds of other communities, and suddenly there were a lot of runners in the community. So I could also just like stand back a little bit and like help people with their setups and explain things in the game and just kind of do the coaching aspect and see other people thrive, see the community grow. I think that was the like one of my favorite effects of the Darbian effect, that um, suddenly there was a community, whereas before it was like 2 3 runners at a time, mostly myself most of the time. And yeah, suddenly that was different. So that was a very enjoyable time while I was taking a step back myself, just having all of those other people that you can watch, that you can help, that you can see improve. I think at some point, if you're leading a community, I think that's the point that you want to get to, because when I joined, there was no community at all. So with creating the Discord server, with starting to collect strats in a single space, having this loose, still a little bit too loose knowledge base there. A lot of things are still only in people's heads sometimes. We gotta archive those better, but but yeah, that was 2021 for me. I think 21 was still affected by COVID insofar as that there was no ESA. 2020, of course, no. 2021, there was also no in-person ESA, I want to say. And then 2022 came along, and I wanted to go to ESA again, and I wanted to submit something. Other people were running the game. Elekman in chat. JDog at the time was improving times quickly, and we are all 3 Europeans. We made the plan to go to ESA and have a 3-way race if they let us, to one up the 2-person race from the iteration before. So I started grinding, playing the game again, having fun with it, and we started developing some boss tactics, I want to say. Specifically the Tatanga boss. So in Space Zone, you have Tatanga, which is a pretty straightforward boss if you just look at it from the outside. But there's so much going into it. It's a very tight frame window of like 27-ish frames that everything has to happen in. And it changes depending on the exact like angle or approach that you go towards him. So overall, the fight should be over in 120 frames, so roughly 2 seconds, and 27 of those are ridiculously crucial, where all of the direct Mario boss interaction happens. For that, we got a custom-made practice ROM just for that boss fight. Another one of those luxury things that we couldn't even dream of before. So this one would give us all of the stats now, would tell us exactly how many frames we were off, what the cooldown frames of the boss were. It would go too deep to properly describe it in this podcast, but yeah, if you can imagine like 27 frames at 60 FPS ish. It's half a second for which you either have to shoot the boss 4 times and stomp him on the head once, or get all 6 shots in, which involves some creative meshing techniques to even be able to do that. You need, I think the minimum that you can get if you perfectly space out the shots would be like 13-ish hertz, 13-ish shots per second, so to speak. More realistically, you have to get around 16, 17-ish hertz of meshing rate, which is up there in the meshing rates. I think for some short bursts in some fighting games, some people can get in the 20s, like low 20s. For Tetris, like modern Tetris, the rolling technique, you can get over 20 hertz, but that's a very different technique and very short burst of mostly 4 to 5 taps. That is not necessarily transferable to SML2, where you need 6 inputs. So it would just make it a little bit inconvenient. So we had to come up with our own like meshing techniques that work, which also got influenced by the Japanese SML1 community, where pretty much getting faster on bosses currently is the one big thing that is still possible, or what was one of the big time saves that was still open. And people just came up with all kinds of different grips and piano techniques and scratching techniques. And so we just were happy to have like input from, I'm trying to find a controller, to have input from other communities as well about this, because not everybody can do the exact same thing. People, like some people might not run on a Super Game Boy 2 setup where they don't have a Super Nintendo controller available. The entire Super Game Boy thing comes with the caveat or the nice option that you can choose between 2 input types, where you have either 2 buttons for shooting or 2 buttons for jumping, depending on what you choose. So you can space out your meshing pretty much between 2 buttons if you're very precise. All kinds of things happened around that single boss fight. So that is something that happened mostly in 2020, 2021, where we just figured all of those things out. Oh, I forgot to say, one big community thing in 2020, since we had all of that influx of people and suddenly so many runners, we took the opportunity and made a tournament for the first time. Hopefully not the last time in the history of the game, but so far it's been the only one. Just a glitchless tournament, double elimination bracket on speed gaming. That was just cool to have, because for years that wouldn't even be possible because there were not enough runners in the game. And now suddenly it was. I think we got 22 people to join, which is
22. Wow.
ridiculously much.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's really cool.
Like even some of the very old ones, even Controller Head came back for that one, who hadn't done any speed running in years. He saw the tournament was going on, came back, joined, had fun, had some ideas. He was obviously looking at the new strats that we had developed in the meantime, had some ideas of his own, some interesting ones. So that was just one more aspect of that effect from earlier that I mentioned. Yeah, I think after that the game became a little bit more quiet again. Like activity slowly went back again. People got their individual goals and phased out of the community. But also some people kept pushing, kept looking for strats. We have one community member, one runner, Jubaloo, who just likes looking into the like minutia of certain strategies. The game operates on like running oscillation cycles, for the lack of a better word. It's SML2's version of subpixels, that his speed oscillates at running speed between 1 and 2 pixels per frame. And those octets, like it's 8 at the time, and then it switches to the next pattern. And those octets can start at different points when you start a level, which means that sometimes that influences lag. It's nothing you can, in most cases, influence anything with, but at least knowing about those things help, so you don't start pointlessly looking for lag reduction strats where it's just sadly somewhat random.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of knowledge was built during that time through some community members. Yeah. He also, same person, also found a new strat as early as 2022. Like you would think in that 2020 time we had then finally found everything big, but also big is very relative in a simple and glitchless speedrun.
Just in the frames a
But
bunch, man.
yeah, And sometimes you have to just rethink your entire approach. And that is what this strat was, which is why I'm mentioning it in the first place, where I'm not mentioning all of the others. But this particular one is one of those things where you just think about it and say to yourself, why did nobody ever think of this? It's the simple thing of slowing down to be faster. So there was this very, very risky strat of grabbing a power up in the last Turtle Zone stage. In the Darbian days, Darbian coined it the nasty, just because it's the name of the strat, because it is just not nice to do. And you have to kill your momentum a little bit, but just not enough to still maintain enough momentum to make it over the next gap. It's a tricky setup. But it was the fastest one that we had, so we were going for it. But by simply just stopping right before that place and then continuing, we were able to cut out a lot of lag and maintain full running speed across the entire section without that weird wiggle in between, that it ends up being pretty much the exact same time, no risk involved. That is just one of those fantastic findings that make your entire speedrun so much more convenient. You don't have that gigantic reset point so late in the game anymore.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Just by like slowing down slightly? Like
just by slowing down, just by waiting. So what you're doing is an enemy is walking towards you. It's one of those diver Goombas, who's I think exclusive to SML2. No other diver Goombas. And you kind of phase through him in the nasty version. But at the same time, with that wiggle, you slow down, then you speed up again. So there's always a slowdown in there in the first place. And at the same time, you also are in that very middle section longer, and that middle section is laggy. There's one power-up that counts as a sprite. There's the Diver Goomba. There is Mario, who consists of several sub-sprites. And there's an enemy right below you. So that is just guaranteed to be laggy. And exactly with the old strat, with the nasty, you do the wiggle in exactly that spot. So you slow down where it's laggy, which just multiplies the lag, obviously. And that is where the strat actually saves time. So you slow down for longer in terms of frames, but you don't have as much lag, and you have full running speed through the entire thing. Breaks completely even, is super free. And it breaks even with like the fast version of the nasty. With the wiggle, you always have some variance in the strat. So you can't even if you get it, you sometimes don't save as much time as you could. And with the new strat, it is just very, very consistent, super convenient. Can't praise Chubalu enough for coming up with that one.
Yeah, I remember the nasty, so it's nice that
it
has been eliminated.
Forever, never coming back.
Good riddance.
Will not be missed by me at least.
Piss, you won't be missed. Yeah.
But yeah, that brings me.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Since that was a new strategy, things brings me to something that I personally discovered. When was that? Back in 2020 as well, I want to say. I think that was just as part of the bigger developments. There was a technique in the game that we didn't know about for all of those years, a completely new movement tech, which involves swimming with bunny ears. So if you have bunny ears in the game and keep your jump button pressed, Mario will continuously jump on the very first frame whenever he touches the ground, which also works underwater, which we were probably aware of, but we never thought about actually applying it. We do have, in the glitchless route, we do have the bunny ears for most of the level. But the thing that nobody in all of those years, it also fits in the category why has nobody ever actually tried this? if you keep holding your jump button when you like go around a bend, like go down and back up again, and have something to bonk your head on, you can set that up. So you bonk your head, keep the jump button held. On the next time Mario bounces on the floor, he will go back up on the very first frame. And what we didn't know is that his first swim stroke would be like 3 times the height of a regular swim stroke,
Hmm.
which is just so much faster, just for that first couple of frames that you go up. So instead of having to, because mashing or swimming well, swimming fast vertically is not easy. What you have to do is you have to release the jump button as short as possible, and then press it for just the right amount of time, and then release it very shortly again. So it's a difficult kind of setup. And the entire lower part of that we can skip out now. We get this big boost pretty much for those couple of turnarounds. And it also helps with some setups. So during the 2020 time, we developed a new strategy for carrying a power up into the final Turtle Zone level, which then allows you, because with Super Mario, so Big Mario, you can do a spin jump in SML2. Most people might know that. And you can grab power-ups from above. And there's one power-up that we need to grab right at the start of Turtle Zone 3. But normally we have to damage boost through 2 sections in the previous level, so we wouldn't have Super Mario, and we would have to grab the power-up from below and jump back up, grab it, and then continue. And the bunny swimming setup helps with maintaining swim speed in a certain place, which makes us able to do the Gordo skip, the enemy stolen from the Kirby's Dream Land games. It's a very tight fit. Like normally you have a hard time, or you can only do it with losing time, walking under him slowly. But with this setup, we can very precisely time our approach and actually skip taking damage once, so then we can get the actual time save in the following level by grabbing that one power up quicker. That is one of those like more complex things. You find one thing, then you can apply it, and then it makes sense in another level. So
yeah, it's
and
something
it's also interesting. It's no, go ahead.
Something I also remember from the grind is because you mentioned like how the walking works, but the swimming has its own like. Is it still like an RNG thing, like your swim speeds? I know there's like 2 different ones, and
It technically is like,
yeah,
theoretically it is deterministic, but you cannot know whether you start swimming on an odd or an even frame.
you have your coin toss, we have our coin toss. I mean, it all works out.
Yeah. The thing is, back in the day, we weren't even aware of different swim speeds. We didn't notice until somebody pointed out, somehow I'm losing time here. What's going on? And then you start looking, and then you figure out, actually, these speeds are quite distinct from each other. If you know about it, you see it. So that was one of those changes where we figured out that that is the case, and also how to fix it or like reset it. There's no quick fix. All you can do is restart swimming by touching down or jumping out of the water, and then you get another coin toss. And it's all about recognizing what swim speed you have as quickly as possible, possibly resetting or just continuing on. It's a bit challenging at first.
Just such an interesting mechanic that they have. Like, why have 2 different swim speeds?
There are a couple of those things where you don't really understand why they exist in the game. Some of those technical tidbits. For example, on the moon, Space One, walking is faster than floating through the air. In any other level, those things are completely equal. On the moon, you save 1 frame every 8 frames. by walking. Why? I don't know.
Sure.
Walking left, you lose a frame. Like you lose one more frame even every 8 frames. So you lose 2 frames versus walking right, but those two are not usually comparable well in the speed run. It's
Gotta
actually
love
the
random
same,
bullshit.
yeah, the same level of time save with fast swimming. It's also 1 frame every 8 frames that you save.
Hmm.
There's also like a leftover value in memory from when you land from a jump that gets stored,
Mm.
and that affects how quickly you can drop off the next ledge that you fall off.
Huh.
Why that exists? No idea. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
It
there's
doesn't.
also
It
the
doesn't.
I just remembered like you have a set jump height, but if you like hold up and release at the right time, you get like a little extra height,
Yeah.
which is
Did
necessary
we really
sometimes.
go through almost through 2 hours of podcast without ever mentioning
This-
a super jump?
it
Yeah,
happens.
that is exactly what you just described. It's the super jump. But this one I can explain away, or can give a proper explanation for at
Mhm.
least, because this one makes perfect sense. So we mentioned Super Mario Land 1 earlier, with how abruptly Mario stops and within 1 frame he reaches running speed.
Mhm.
That is something they fixed in Super Mario Land 2 by giving him some inertia. So when you stop, he slowly comes to a halt. When you start running, he doesn't immediately have running speed, but he speeds up a little bit. And the same thing applies to jumping upwards. If you jump and release your jump button, he will softly come to the end of his inertia, his initial one. And that is exactly what the super jump is. The weird thing is that they hard coded that if you hold your jump button for longer than 26 frames, that very effect is cut short.
Mm.
So the what you would call the full jump, I think that's the weird one. The super jump is the natural one.
Oh.
So it works that way, that you release the jump button exactly before that routine would kick in. And then the
Okay.
inertia just carries Mario 8 pixels higher, ideally, which is in the Game Boy, or in this game, is exactly 1 tile, which makes it relevant for reaching certain spots.
Hmm. Cool. So you don't have to hold up or anything. Just release. It's all about releasing the A at the right time.
Correct. It works
Okay.
with different jump heights. There are 2 distinct jump heights: no running speed
Mm.
and running speed, as well as if you're stationary, you can also alternatively hold up. That's where holding up comes
Oh,
in.
the okay, stationary.
Only if you do not have running speed. Yeah,
Got it.
those two are equivalent in terms of the jump height.
Got it. Okay.
But yeah,
So.
it works in all kinds of situations. It also works if you jump out of water with where no running speed at all is involved. You can get water super jumps. Uh, it only does not work in space
Got it.
because there's no inertia. It's really just like a linear speed when you press the jump button. There's
Mm.
not any ballistic curve or anything.
Yeah. There's so many. This game has so many just like little intricate details about how the movement works. It's just surprisingly complex for a Game Boy game.
Yeah.
I've always found that pretty
Partially
interesting.
because maybe because they were trying to go out of their way and make a good physics engine with like things like inertia.
Hmm.
Maybe that's where they just also forgot some things along the way, and then you got the oddities of inconsistent swimming speeds for some reason. Might be a leftover from something entirely different. It's it's hard to figure out, impossible to know.
Yeah, they got their bank. Now the speedrunners have to suffer.
Or make use of them.
Yeah, I guess it depends on how painful the strategies are. But
Yeah.
Um,
The thing is, there are not many like things that you specifically learn that are outside of just generally moving in a jump and run game. It's those couple of things, like the super jumps, that might seem unintuitive sometimes. Uh, Other things like corner boost, where you just
oh yeah.
smash your sprite into the corner of a block, that kind of makes sense that you might get pushed forward by a pixel. That's not too difficult. Yeah, that's a nice thing about the glitchless category. It's very approachable once you figure out those couple of things.
Hmm.
Other than that, it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah. Um, anyway, for the going back to the timeline side of things, so there's still a little
Mm.
more to talk about there. I know you wrote some notes or whatever, so
A
don't want to
little
miss
bit, yeah.
anything.
So, like, not so much from my own perspective, because I took another very long break. Like this time, way longer. After that ESA run in 22 with the 3-person race.
Hmm.
For that one, I grinded, and then I came back from the race, and I just didn't really feel like streaming that much anymore. At ESA, we had messed around with the like Tatanga meshing strats that I mentioned. It's nice to have 3 people at the same place to just share some thoughts. So I immediately after ESA, I made a controller that was had more clicky buttons, ordered some new controller robots specifically for the Tatanga fight. And once I had that, I just didn't feel like actually using it. So I took a very long break of like 1.5 years ish until like 2 months ago. So the timeline immediately wraps to today now, from my perspective, because during those days I was barely streaming. If I was streaming, it was Beat Saber. Um, I Back in the day when I was not streaming the game, I would still play it at home, just on my GBA, just practicing a little bit. I have an EverDrive, can just plug it into my GBA SP and just have some quick practice fun with the game. I was not doing that at all whatsoever during those 1.5 years. Completely took a step back and kind of watched uh, the the other active runners at the time do their thing and just be there to help with some advice. Whenever somebody starts out on Twitch speedrunning the game, I try to be there and give some advice if they want. That's what I was doing for most of the time. And that's also when one of my one of my former viewers, Ayaka Perfect Dream, picked up the game themselves and went on a ridiculous grind. Uh, I think they streamed for a year straight, almost daily, sometimes twice a day. Almost nothing except for glitchless attempts. And it became pretty clear that they had a knack for the game. They had a very good understanding, and they definitely had the perseverance. uh, so that was a nice long like project to watch, to be a part of. How he kept getting better and better, and eventually got into world record contention of that world record that we thought had been the end. And it was about a year ago that that grind successfully ended in beating the 26 14.4 by zero 0.2 seconds with a bad witch pattern. We haven't mentioned the witch yet. There's
Oh
one big
yeah.
like true RNG element in the glitchless run, or in all glitchless categories. That is the witch fight, the boss of Pumpkin Zone. It's pretty much hard coded that the, the witch appears either on the right or the left side, and you can just stand in the middle if you want and react to that. Reacting usually means you're losing some time. So pretty early on in the 2020 area, we switched to predicting the patterns. because we had empirical data that one pattern, which is left, right, and left, it's 3 rounds for the witch, had a prevalence of 42%, which is good enough for me to go for. Then during that time, people, the Lightbulb Sun, the person who made the practice ROM, as well as Taurus, the guy who made the color hack SML2DX, they independently looked into how the witch actually works and if there's any potential for manipulation. They both came to the conclusion, nope, there's not. And now we kind of understand how it works. Basically, the game looks at a hardware counter. The hardware counter is not bound to the frame rate of the game, but to the frame rate of the physical CPU. So it updates like 16,000 times a second. And the game code looks at the last 2 bytes of that value. And if there's a 0, so byte representation, right? You have 2 values. You can have values from 1 to 4. No, bit, sorry. Last 2 bits, we're ASM here. Last 2 bits. So from 0 to 4, you have those representations, and the game just checks, is it a 0? If it's a 0, then the pattern of the witch changes. No, it doesn't change. If it's not a 0, it's going to get set to 0, and the pattern actually changes. There's a 70% chance of the witch changing the side from where it had just appeared. And at the beginning of the fight, it is always considered on the right side, even though invisible. But then it checks the register. Is it a 0, 1, 3, 4? If it's a 0, it stays on the right. If it's any of the other ones, it goes to the left. So 75% chance of switching times 3 ends up with those 42% for always switching sides. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that is how it works. And the world record by Ayaka actually has one of those bad patterns where he went for the prediction and had to reconsider. That usually costs you 1.5 seconds because you have to go all the way over, build up speed again. And he still beat the unbeatable record.
So that means like mid 2612 potential for like a perfect run.
For sure.
Wow. That's crazy.
So yeah. And now I suddenly felt incentivized to run the game myself again. And it was about 2 months ago. I had planned. I never had planned for like staying away for so long. It never felt like I needed to, but I also had trouble making the step to come back. So something must have been up there. Some kind of like hidden burnout again. So, but that was finally over this year, 2 months ago, and I went straight back to the grind. I'm still on the grind. I was on PB pace yesterday into the castle. Just made one small mistake, and that was with a witch pattern, like with 2 bad witch patterns, by the way.
Oh.
So if I had gotten a better witch and not made that small mistake in the castle, that would have been like a 2615 already.
Whoa.
As well. So it is very, very possible to beat the current world record, and I think I'm gonna keep grinding for now until I get it, and then see what happens. We have, like as I mentioned earlier with the Tatanga strats, we have somewhat consistent strats to get the realistically best outcome, like 1 out of 10 times now, I want to say, which is only 6 shots, which removes a bit of the dying animation. So it's not just faster because you kill him faster, but he also dies faster, which saves about a full second. So that is something that Ayaka never went for in his attempts. Like that we didn't go back in the 2020 days. That it was known that it was possible. I think ILM was the first one who ever even got it, but we didn't have any good enough understanding to like develop a setup that works sometimes. So with that early time save, sometimes in runs now, it makes it a lot more convenient, a lot more chill to continue. And yeah, it just feels very attainable. And I would say the limit is like even 26.0x could be possible in the future. But that is, I've said this before many times, but I'm going to say it again, but that is really pushing it then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there can't be much more like
Yeah.
time saves.
Just because of the nature of the game. But again, we thought that several times. I don't know what else could be found out of the blue.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see anything, but we will see. I'm not gonna like predict anything anymore in this game or in any game.
Yeah. Well, at least we know 2612 at least. Definitely. So.
Yes. Realistically, basically all already happened minus
Yeah,
RNG.
minus RNG, of course.
Yes.
And sounds like we've reached modern day.
That is modern day,
We have
yeah.
arrived.
I mean that is pretty much modern day. That's the state of the art. Then now would be what would happen afterwards,
Mm-hmm.
which is also something like we mentioned any percent before. Any percent has also seen some development in the last couple of years. This is one of those funny things where some completely novel idea seems absolutely obvious, but the entire community for years had just disregarded it. So there's the thing in the any percent category where once you reach the bottom floor of the glitched area, all we knew was how to go right, how to scroll the screen to the right. We knew going left was possible from the TAS. Humanly viable setups we couldn't come up with. And if you look at like if you blow up the map of that area, where you land, it's only everything wraps around, and where you land is much closer to the trigger point if you go left. The thing is, we didn't know how. So we always just thought about setting up anything like way above the ground to traverse through invisible pipes, get to the left that way, and never could find anything that was reliable or working in the first place. And then someday, somebody who was not part of the community at all comes into our Discord server and just very naively states, I've looked at the map. Isn't it much faster to just go left? And all of us experienced any percent runners were just saying, yeah, it might seem obvious, but let me tell you, my guy. Well, it turns out we did eventually start looking into it again. It turns out if you do some shenanigans with scrolling the screen down, you can actually remove those barriers, those camera barriers that would prevent you from going left if you do it in a specific way, which is just something that we hadn't even considered before. And because before we would just brute force our way, like jump against that thing. Who would think of camera positioning in a Game Boy game to have any effect of any about anything? We didn't. Could have been something that we could have tried. We didn't. That's just the fact. So this random idea from a random person who had probably good intentions. In some instances, when maybe a person less or just different persons had looked on that idea, would have been disregarded straight away. In this case, we actually looked into it, found a working setup, and it is so much closer to the trigger point that since then the world record has been improved by I think 12 seconds,
Wow.
which is a big jump. And I think it's still not super optimized. So that could be, if I get the glitchless record at some point, that could be another goal for the future, to also revisit that category.
Yeah.
That would be on my bucket list.
I mean, that's a hefty time save for such a short category, so
Mm.
definitely worth at least getting a PB with it.
Yeah, for sure, because you can allow some mistakes earlier on and still get at least a PB. If you want a competitive time, of course, you still want to optimize the run. And
Mhm.
I don't know, I've never run this particular route myself, so I don't even know the potential, what you can get on an ideal run. Maybe Lekman in chat knows. He's the one who did most of the strat finding for the new stuff.
How's the all levels category look?
All levels was improved during the 2020 time. Mostly Adam Ferrari and I Love Mario ran that one. At the time, I thought it was pretty optimized, but I think just like the general strategy inflation
Hmm.
and things carrying over, like the new swimming stuff in the submarine or the new Tatanga kill. I think I know that translates one-to-one to all levels as well. So there's some free time save there. Maybe that's gonna be something worth considering running again too. But the run that is currently, I think Adam has the record. I think that one is pretty good, at least for what it was.
Got it.
So yeah,
How much
but
longer is that over glitchless?
it is 12 minutes longer ish.
Okay, well, that's a good amount of time.
It doesn't have a lot of specific, like, exclusive strats. There is some checkpoint abuse that you can do, some non-glitchy ones. If you take a checkpoint, then die, and then take a bonus exit. So it's restricted to the levels that have secret exits. The checkpoint will not be overwritten. So the next time you enter the level, you start at the checkpoint again. So you usually want to do it in that order. Play the level, touch the checkpoint, die, go to the secret exit, play the secret level, go back, start at the checkpoint, finish the level, continue game. That is, in essence, how the all levels category works. It's also a glitchless category. Um, yeah, I don't see. I was thinking of like maybe coming up with something adjacent or similar to the Beat Wario category, just with all levels, but I don't think. I think that gets a little bit too arbitrary at that point.
It's kind of like 120 star over 70, like 70's glitch. Well, no major glitches, I guess, but 120 you
Hmm.
can BLJ wherever you want.
I'm not even knowledgeable enough. I've never followed SM64 enough for that.
I'm just trying to make a comparison that makes sense to
Mm,
me, but
yeah,
it just it's just interesting. Like some 100% is being glitchless or not for
yeah.
depends on the game.
I think in SML2's case, it's just that glitchless is by far the most popular category. Always
Mm.
has been,
Yeah.
both in terms of active runners as well as audience.
Hmm. Yeah, that makes
Um,
sense.
it's it's one of those games that just everybody seems to have played in their childhood. Like the Game Boy, at least in my generation or slightly younger generations, it's just so commonplace that pretty much everybody at least knows the game.
Hmm. Well,
So they want to see it played the way they remember it sometimes.
yeah, I get it. Or will be just absolutely pissed if they see a glitch. Just, oh, how dare you?
I mean, I think we are lucky that the glitched category in SML2 is so different that at that point, it's already interesting enough again to not get mad.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, some communities really suffer from those kinds of mindsets. As I've said, I've been part of the Dark Souls community for many years, and there are all kinds of different opinions, not just speedrunning wise, but in general, very clashing opinions in the wider community. There's always some drama involved.
Right.
I'm glad that SML2 is mostly drama free.
Yeah. Um, Something I see keep getting brought up, so I gotta ask. The one button category.
Yes, that is one of those that, like, it's the no running category that emerged from the 25-year anniversary in 2017. Uh, that one is one of the more optimized categories. I gotta say, it sounds like
Really?
the most memey. Yeah, just don't run, or just don't use the run button, which also means you cannot shoot, which also means you cannot take a shortcut in macro zone.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but it is somewhat optimized. The actual world record uh, is not even on the leaderboard because the Jet Pastel, who ran it as a weekend project, uh, didn't use the right emulator settings, sadly.
Damn.
So it's probably gonna be all right, but at some point you also want to be consistent with your leaderboard rules.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but yeah, there's some potential there, but what is there already is also better than a lot of the other miscellaneous categories in terms of optimization.
Yeah. I, I'm used to like that being called like walkathon. So
Yeah, that's exactly what
when I
it
was
is.
like one button, I was like, well, I mean like the D pads are all buttons, right? So it's like, how do you beat the
Nah,
game with the one button?
no.
Nah, it's just no run button.
It's this is entirely on me. I just wanted to have funny category names during that anniversary marathon. If
I
anybody
see.
ever complains about it, I'm more than willing to let go of the name, but
Well, I'm
it's kind
complaining
of been
about it
established as
right
well.
now, live.
You're not enough people. I'm sorry.
That's, you
It's
know
just you
what?
versus
That's
me.
fair.
You lose. I'm sorry. Nah,
I
but
gotta respect
I'm
that.
I'm also serious though. If things like that happen in communities, I tend to go just with community consensus. It's pretty easy
Mm-hmm.
to make a little poll or something about the or within the active community at the time. And why stick to standards for like purely uh, conservative reasons? Not always necessary.
Hmm.
It's like with the thing. Like I'm glad we don't call the main category any percent normal.
Normal.
It's normal. I think
Yes.
it's still called that on Speedruns Live.
Hmm.
I would not be surprised. Oh no, maybe I must had it changed at some point.
I
But
was gonna
you
say
can
then
still find
you better
them.
call any percent abnormal on us on
True.
SRL and be funny. Um.
I wanted to be funny and call one of the categories 18 golden coins. They didn't like that. That is not descriptive enough. I was like, what? It's funny though. Yeah,
What?
that was just a
Just
complete completion, like clear every of the three
oh,
pipes.
okay.
It
I
was
was
a,
like
a race
three
category that we
completions.
had.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That makes more sense. Um. Yeah. You briefly mentioned it, but yeah, I know there's a pretty good ROM hack, the DX edition of the game, where they added color for
Mhm.
like the Game Boy Color, and just
Yes.
it looks nice. I don't know how that all the differences between that and the original.
It it is essentially a proper Game Boy Color game. So what Taurus, the ROM hacker, did was have a look at how uh, Game Boy Color games are set up and pretty much transferred the game to a proper Game Boy Color game, which means that it will run on Like if you play it on a Game Boy Color or on a Game Boy Advance, it will run without lag pretty much, because
Wow.
those newer iterations of the Game Boys have a more powerful processor, and they are not as susceptible to lag anymore. You also have that's one difference, one big difference across the two characters. Spoiler:
Yeah.
Torres also added Luigi into the game, and Luigi has his own physics. He runs faster, jumps higher. There's no downside to Luigi in terms of speedrun. He's
Oh
a little
no.
bit
Yeah.
more floaty and a little like it feels like
Skitty.
you're running on ice.
Yeah.
Yes, he skids a lot.
Oh, I know all about that. Lost levels.
Yeah, yes, exactly like that.
You'll
But
never run
um,
Luigi. Ugh.
the thing in a basically only hold right game, you don't get to experience the skidding a lot, right?
Lost levels has got a lot of turning around things.
Yeah.
He
And we have
loses
a
like 8. The world record between Mario and Luigi is like 8 seconds. In Mario's favor, of course. Like
mm,
he
it
he,
is
he
very
it
different in terms of DX for SML2.
yeah.
I
Yeah,
think
Luigi's
the
not.
oh, I think the Luigi world record is 24:59, if I remember correctly,
Oh,
which is a
wow.
minute faster than the Mario record. The Mario record only benefits from the less of lag,
I see.
the lack of lag.
Yeah, so Luigi's just the way to go in that ROM
Yeah.
hack.
Also, the higher jump height alone just helps you. It cuts out all of the tight super jumps. They're just normal jumps now.
Mhm.
Introduces new super jumps that you don't even need. Like everything is reachable with just his normal his normal regular jumps.
Hmm.
Uh, it's convenient. I tried, or I wanted to run it at some point, but I ran into technical issues. Um, so if you want to play it on console, you kind of have to play it on the Game Boy Player,
Mm.
which I have, but I also don't like using the GameCube controller. I just don't
Oh
like the
yeah.
controller in general. So I wanted to play it with my regular Super Nintendo controllers. Uh, Bought a RAFnet adapter for that. Uh, those ship from Canada. I live in
Mm.
Germany.
Yeah.
The entire process took 11 months
Oh
for
my
me
god.
to supposedly, I'm not even done yet, supposedly get the thing delivered. What happened instead was I had a letter in my mailbox telling me that it could not be delivered because the name didn't match with my mailbox, but they apparently found the mailbox to put the letter in, and they had sent it back to Canada after 11 months of waiting.
Holy
That was
shit.
part one of the story.
Oh,
So
we're not done.
what must have happened was that I ordered it on eBay, on the RAFnet store on eBay, because they have a proper vendor store there, and for some reason they took my eBay username as my proper name, which
Mm.
obviously doesn't stand on my mailbox,
No.
and just said nope, not doing that. We're also not going to tell you or give you any choice. We're just sending it back. So that was fun. Um, I told I contacted RAFnet about that, and was it, can you please just send it again? And like a couple of months later, it did finally arrive. So after a year, I had it in my hands. I think it was 9 months when they sent it back, and then 2 more months. Yeah, 11 months altogether. That's the correct number. Then
Well,
I had it in my hands. I tried it out, and it doesn't work the way I want it to work.
oh my god.
There's some weird in either I have a bad model or it's just the way it works. But if you perma mesh for fluttering, for example, it just doesn't take all of the inputs. It modulates them to make them longer individually, I feel
Mm.
like. So you cannot get your frequency in on the controller. And it just makes the game not viable, or the entire setup not viable for the speedrun. It works in general, just not for. Doesn't feel right. Leave it
Mm.
at that. It doesn't feel right. So that was an endeavor for nothing, pretty much.
Well, that sucks.
Yeah, I could run it on emulator, but I don't like to.
No, yeah, I get it. Well,
Again, nothing like for anybody who's watching. Nothing against anyone running on emulator. It's especially like that's a good topic. Just in general for Game Boy speedrunning, we have fantastic emulators. At least two of them, BGB and Gambate Speedrun, which both have speedrun specific features, like just not allowing certain things to be set, telling verifiers that you're running on an accurate emulator by showing a splash screen when you reset, things like that. So if somebody doesn't have the means or doesn't want to get like this cumbersome retro setup, it's perfectly fine to run on emulator. Also, these days, SML2 is on the Switch Online store, and surprisingly, I think for the first time in Nintendo's history, uh, they made an accurate emulator out of
oh
the
my
box.
god.
No conversion, no nothing, no different lag, no anything bad. It's just accurate, and I was so surprised when I found that out. So
Crazy.
yeah, I mean, do you know of any other accurate virtual console?
Um, well, for like NES, it's weird. Like, obviously, Wii VC, just for
Mm,
everything, was weird. Um, but like even Nintendo Switch, I think it's all accurate, but it runs at a flat 60 when like the NES and SNES ran at 60.09. So it's
yeah,
like,
that's what I mean. That's not
yeah,
accurate at that
it's not
point. That's the
accurate
kind
in
of
terms of frame
in
rate. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So the fact that the Game Boy being accurate is interesting though because
Yes,
the
because it's such a weird number. Game Boy frame rate is like 59.7275 and then some.
Mhm.
So it's not any of those standard things that you would think comply with HDMI, for example. That's always been an issue to make the signal compliant to the HDMI signal that you then output. But
Yeah.
they somehow did it.
So it's just the right frame rate. Yeah, the NES and SNES aren't the right frame rate on Switch.
Mm,
That's wow.
yep. That's usually
Fascinating.
maybe something changed in some later HDMI standard that they then suddenly could get around,
Mm.
or they're doing some other magic. But yeah, I can only say it does work. We tested and tested and tested, and we couldn't find anything bad.
Mm-hmm. It makes me wonder
Could be
how the
different for other games,
yeah.
but SML2 should be safe.
Makes me wonder how the like Super Game Boy does it. I know the original model, like the one the US got, which
Mhm.
it does not play at the right frame rate, but the Super Game
Yes,
Boy 2 does, despite the SNES being its own wacky frame rate.
I am pretty sure the original Super Game Boy. Uh, it's like a layered version of the two frequencies, console frequency and then the Super Game Boy frequency. You can easily replace the timing crystal in an original Super Game Boy to make the thing accurate, to make it act as a Super Game Boy 2, pretty much. That is a mod that has existed for decades almost.
That's good at least.
Because yeah, I mean the entire reason for the main reason for the Super Game Boy 2 is probably the release of Pokemon and
Mm-hmm.
people
Yeah.
wanting to share their Pokemon, because the original Super Game Boy didn't have a port and also wouldn't have been compatible in the first place, because you need perfect sync between the two devices. If you have ever tried syncing a Super Game Boy 2 to anything, no wait, there was something that was incompatible. It would have been incompatible. Let's put it that way. Or did the Super Game Boy have a port? No, it didn't, did it? The original one? Where's my Super Game Boy? I don't think that had a port at all, right?
Mm,
I gotta run off screen and check real quick.
okay, sure. The norm for running Game Boy on real hardware, if you mean like, do you mean running on a Game Boy itself or just running Game Boy games? Because if it's Game Boy games at all, I think the norm is just using a Super Game Boy 2 and doing it that way. But is there capture for Game Boy by itself? I don't know how that all works. I think yeah, just this Super Game Boy 2 is the way to go. Because that's technically in some way original hardware, right? I don't know. My knowledge is a little limited on non NES stuff myself, but I think it's something like that. Um, Something I'll have to remember to bring up is the SD to SNES now, or they call it FX pack now, right? Mine's still SD to SNES because I got it like 4 or 5 years ago, but they added like you can just load up a Game Boy ROM like you would a SNES ROM, and it boots into like Super Game Boy 2 mode. So I use that, and I think I was the first person to do runs with that for Mario Land 2, which should
I'm
work.
back.
Welcome
I'm
back.
immeasurably sorry for the break.
It's fine.
I didn't even find it. Where's
New
my Super
shirt.
Game Boy? What?
What?
We're not supposed to notice that.
Well, it's kind of hard to not notice that. Well,
Yeah. Did you do some research?
no. I was talking about how I was answering a question that Super Game Boy 2 is like the most common way to speedrun Game Boy games on original hardware, and then I went
Yeah,
over how
nowadays
the
it definitely is.
and then I went over how the SD SNES or FX pack as it's known now. If you load up a Game Boy ROM now, this is a slightly newer feature, maybe like
Mhm.
a few years now, but it boots into like a Super Game Boy 2 mode, and from at
Yeah.
least what we kind of know, it's accurate. And I led the charge there for Mario Land 2.
Yes. Yeah, with the again specifics with the SD2 SNES, it should be accurate. With the SGB2 core ish thing,
Because
with the FX pack, it supposedly has some issues,
oh,
but that could be on a on a game by game basis. So if anybody wants to commit immediately to that, better check back with me, and we're doing some testing.
well,
Because I don't have an FX pack myself to check.
isn't the FX pack just the SD SNES with a different name?
I thought so too until I saw the table. Let
Oh,
me see if
really?
I can find it.
Okay.
Can
I always
probably
assumed that
share.
was just the case. Because I just bought mine before.
Um,
And mine's not even a pro. I don't know if that matters for whatever. I've had my
yeah,
SD SNES for a while.
I also have only a very old one, Model F, I think is what it was called.
Oh, yeah, I don't even know.
So
I'll
I'm just
double
gonna
check that
post
kind of stuff.
the thing.
But
I know
where
it
about?
says FX Pack Pro plus SNES Mini. I don't even know what that means.
Oh,
I think we
SNES
should be
Mini?
fine.
Like the.
Plus SNES. Does the
Oh,
FX Pack Pro also have a SNES Mini core?
I, I mean, news to me. I don't care about the mini consoles. Those things suck. But
Yeah, I'm
I'm
confused
they're
by
good
the
casually,
general
but
phrasing. I will have to, because it does say FX Pack Pro plus SNES Mini SGB2.
hmm,
I
interesting.
gotta I gotta ask Adrianus who makes this one. But yeah, the table I posted in
Here it
chat
is.
is an as complete as possible, or as we have overview right now, but all options for playing Game Boy games.
Hmm. I'm glad I got my SNES when I did because I was able to like customize it. I think it looks really nice, and if I wanted to like upgrade to the Pro,
Ah,
which I guess I don't even need to, hopefully, because they like removed a lot of the customization options, so I wouldn't be able to get it till
so
like this year.
customization, was that the Retro Towers thing?
Uh,
Was
I
it
use
called
something
that?
called Stone Age Gamer. They're
Mm, mm.
based in America, so yeah.
That was the one I was thinking of.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Well then, yeah, that's what I
Yes.
use. So
With the rubberized surface as well. I
mm,
know they had at some point they had like purple
yeah,
cartridges,
that's this.
rubberized.
Well,
Yeah,
it's clear purple, but yeah.
yeah,
And then the screws are
those
purple.
are
The
nice.
thing is purple. Like, and then if I get the shell I want for my Super Nintendo, like it's that transparent purple shell, it all just come together very nicely. But so
Very
yeah, hopefully the
cool.
SD SNES will just work for whatever I ever need it for because
Yeah.
it looks good. But
That opens up a whole other can of worms, like all of the tech gadgets that you can collect over time. So much stuff. There's one more let's see,
oh,
one more exotic. This one's one of the more exotic ones. It's the GBA consolizer.
what the
That is, so if you it's probably going to reflect a little bit, but
yeah.
if you look inside, that's the main board of an actual GBA in there,
Wow.
and it comes with an extension board that adds HDMI out to the thing.
Oh, so it's just if the GBA was a console that you plugged into your television through HDMI.
Pretty much, yes.
Very cool.
And it also comes conveniently enough with
A
a
Super
SNES
Nintendo
port.
controller. Incredible.
It's absolutely perfect. The perfect combination.
That's pretty
So
cool.
yeah, that
I haven't
is
seen that.
something one could use. But it's something for collectors, I would say, or
Hmm.
enthusiasts.
Yeah, if I ever wanted GBA stuff, I'd probably use
Oh,
the Game Boy
this is
Player.
of course all the way compatible, yeah, for all Game Boy Color,
Hmm.
GBA games.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah,
Hmm.
I'd probably do the Game Boy Player, especially with like the way they hack it now, so you don't need like the
GBI,
stupid
yes,
discs or whatever the hell. So
yeah. And I also have a GBI set up, the Swiss firmware,
mhm.
and
GBI, that's
there are
right.
many iterations since I got mine set up. That was still for when I was planning for running SML2DX that got foiled by the postal system.
Yeah,
Yeah,
rip.
but it's nice to have.
I definitely
I
had my
like having all kinds of consoles.
yeah, me too.
Like
But
we have original PAL SNES.
oh
That's
yeah,
how
pal.
those look. Uh, I mean, Super Famicom looks almost the same. This one is a little bit yellow or too yellow. These days, I actually run on this one. That's the Super
Mm.
Famicom Junior. The Japanese one has a slightly better graphics chip. This particular one is actually not functioning anymore.
Oh
I'm
well.
having two of these. There might have been a soldering incident that
Mm.
fried the one I was just showing. But
Rip.
it's nice to hold into the camera at least.
Yeah, that's because I've definitely had my shipping overseas issues before. Just nothing to that
Yeah,
extent. But the first time I got an
yeah,
EverDrive, it ended up taking like 8 months or more when everything was
yeah,
said and
because
done because
those used
they
to ship from Ukraine.
yeah,
Yeah.
and when I ordered it, they sent me the board but not a shell, and I was like, oh.
Mhm.
And then I ordered a
Yeah.
shell and it never came, so I was like, oh. so
Unfortunate. Yeah.
so that's when I found out about Stone Age Gamer, and boy, has that been my lifesaver ever since. But god
Yeah.
damn, when I first tried to get an EverDrive,
You could have just
problems.
brutalized another game.
Well, I didn't have. Well, I
Yeah.
did, but I had nothing I wanted to ruin, and I'm not very.
I also would not.
Don't you
Yeah.
even need like a weird screw to get into cartridges?
I mean, you need the like retro bit, I think is what they call it,
Yeah.
the Nintendo
So,
specific ones.
mhm.
Yeah,
Back then, I wouldn't have gone through all that effort. So I don't know.
I
Anyway,
understand.
yeah, didn't talk about any GDQ races. I know there've been like Mario Land 2 GDQ races. I don't know if you've been a
Yeah,
part of them or not, but
I have been part of one. Yes,
okay.
that was during COVID times. So again, it's ridiculously expensive, sadly, for me to go
Hmm.
over to a GDQ. I do not personally have the means. So in that regard, the online version during COVID helped me out. That was 2021 AGDQ in January,
Hmm.
where we had a three-way race between Adam Ferrari, Ape, and myself. That was I mean, it didn't have the entire GDQ experience, right? It's just, in that case, another online marathon, but at least with a bigger reach than
Hmm.
normal. And it happened at the tail end of the 2020 like super
Yeah.
activity era. So it was the right time to to have that kind of representation, and it was fun. And we also got to show off some of those ridiculous things in the game. For example, as I mentioned earlier, the witch fight is random,
Hmm.
and certain parts are more likely than others because of how it works, how it determines the likelihoods. And in that GDQ race, I got the rarest witch pattern that you can get at a likelihood of 1.5%. At the triple right.
Mm. Nice.
That is, it's ridiculous that this happens in that kind of setting.
That's marathon luck for you, I guess. But
Yep,
yeah, Jonas mentioned that that's a three continent race. That's interesting.
it's true.
Asia,
It is
Europe, and
true.
America.
Perfect representation of the community.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You don't see a lot of
but yeah,
that kind of worldwide stuff sometimes. So, and especially with like a community, a more smaller community than most popular games.
mm,
So that's just
yeah,
cool to see.
yes, definitely. It's usually very US heavy. The
Hmm.
communities,
Oh yeah.
um, especially as I mentioned earlier, like just the hoops you have to jump through in countries that didn't have a 60 hertz standard for their
Hmm.
TV systems to just get a starter system, or at least back in the day. Nowadays, you can do a lot more with just upscalers, and there are convenient ways to do it nowadays that are also perfectly fine. But if you go for the original or nostalgic setup, then it's sometimes a little bit tough to get the right setup in Europe, or
Hmm.
probably likewise in Australia. I think they also had PAL. But yeah,
Yeah.
in that
I don't
regard,
know, but
it's uncommon to have this kind of community. And even nowadays, we have a Japanese runner on top of the leaderboard again, which is nice.
yeah.
Like specifically the Japanese community nowadays, just being a little closer. Sometimes I feel like they're still kind of secluding themselves. There's always a language barrier,
Hmm.
which is just a consequence of how the Japanese education system is. So can't blame anyone, but uh, just conservative values for that, I suppose. Um, but yeah, sometimes you have those people. Like we have Ape in the SML 1 and 2 community. We have Ayaka. That's already a nice little overlap.
Hmm.
And sometimes the communities, at least a little bit, can bleed into each other.
Yeah. It
So
is cool how
I hope
popular
that stays that way.
it's cool how popular speedrunning is in Japan. I mean, I guess it makes sense, but
Mhm.
you think about it, and that's like one of the more popular places it is, and their country isn't
Yeah,
that large in comparison to some of the other ones, you know. So
yeah, yeah.
it's just very cool.
They have a strong like gaming community. One of the, like some of the Japanese speedrunning like old websites like Sakura Palace or whatever they were called, or something Sakura,
Mhm.
uh, were just those loose collections, like a forum, collection of forums where they would just post their times way before speedrun.com,
Hmm.
alongside with SDA pretty much. Um, so they have a long tradition as well. It's just that it took a while for the communities to mesh together a little bit more.
Mm.
And nowadays you have big speedrun events like RTA in Japan, who also sometimes accept runners from outside the country, usually 99% Japanese runners.
Yeah.
Uh, but it also is it's watched by a broader audience nowadays, and that is already nice to see.
Mm.
And it is on
Definitely.
Twitch. Like not everything is restricted to Nico Nico anymore. That is
Oh
just
yeah. I didn't think of that.
one of those big changes. Some, like back in the day, you kind of had to watch Nico Nico to catch your Japanese speedrunners.
Mm.
And as a non-premium Nico Nico user, that was not very convenient.
Yeah.
You always got those. I don't know how their business model works that well, or seems to work that well, because they restrict free access to like 360p. You can only watch some
Oh,
broadcasts
good
live.
God.
Uh, that's it might not be that way anymore, but that was how it was at some point. Like a lot of restrictions if you had a free account, and you had to pay premium to get access to the full VOD archive, to certain resolutions. It was ridiculous for a while.
Damn. Well,
So
I'm glad things have gotten
yeah,
better.
I know that Ape, for example, at the very least dual streams nowadays, both to Nico Nico and Twitch.
Mhm.
And I want to say he's one of the bigger Game Boy speedrunners. Maybe also because he just has a lot of the Japanese retro community already behind him, and they
Yeah.
just flock around him as one of their icons. But he gets like triple digits on Twitch as well, which is
Oh wow.
pretty good.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's really good for Game Boy speedrunning. Damn.
yeah. I mean, he's streaming these days. If you wanna follow along with the SML1 world record grind,
Mhm.
Ape25 on Twitch is a good address to check out.
Yeah. Think I've run out of things to ask. Is there anything we haven't gone over that you'd like to talk about?
Mhm.
No.
There's probably things, but I'm gonna say no because
Yeah.
we've been talking for almost 3 hours.
Yeah. It's been a
I feel like
good discussion for sure. So
yeah,
it seems like we've at least gotten all the important things
we
laid out.
definitely went
So
through all of the history of both me and SML2. I think separately again. Uh,
yeah,
yeah, I think we covered a lot, and thanks for providing the opportunity for this. I
of course.
that's one of the like meta topics that I always bring up is just this archiving of knowledge. And
Hmm.
I think these kinds of podcasts help. Like for once, they helped motivating me to look up some of the things, and maybe eventually like officializing them in some way, shape, or form, either on speedrun.com or in like a Discord archive or on a website eventually. And at the same time, it just puts the like state of the art history overview at least out there in form of your podcast for people to check back later. So I think this is a good and important vehicle to just store some of the yeah how does the community look like right now, what are the thoughts about the future of the speedrun, the past of the speedrun. I think these kinds of podcasts are very cool for that. I like watching them.
Well, good to hear for sure. I'm glad it can have some sort of benefit, or multiple benefits, I guess. So,
Yeah,
um, but yeah, if there's any questions in chat, feel free to ask. I know there's been a few, and probably didn't get to all of them. So, if there's something missed, you can feel free. But until then, you can self promote to your liking.
yeah, I mean, as I've said, I am currently on the grind. I stream Mondays, Wednesdays, Thursdays. I stream every day of the week except for Tuesdays and Fridays, around the time of this podcast, pretty much, which is 8 p.m. Central European time, therefore 2 p.m. Eastern US time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's gonna be a lot of SML2 for the time being. Like, that's the nature of the grind.
Mm-hmm.
Um, don't really want to distract myself right now. I feel like I'm getting close to at very least a PB, and I've been on world record pace already so many times in the last couple of weeks. Uh, I feel like it's gonna happen. So that I think that's promotion enough, and that's pretty much all that I'm
If that's not
doing
enticing, I
online.
don't know what is. You
Yeah,
guys know what to do.
if you like SML2, it's a good place. Like also, we talk about all kinds of random stuff. There's a lot of dead air to fill. You see the same game every single time, every
Mhm.
day.
Yeah.
So the topics get broader and broader.
Mhm.
As you've noticed today, I don't mind talking a lot. So
No, that's what we're here
it's
for,
it's
right?
gonna it's gonna be like that in my stream as well.
Yeah. I've dipped my toes into Mario Land 2 speedrunning. I have like 2805. I think that's what I got. I did it for the 12-hour challenge, so
Uh-huh.
but it was a very enjoyable speedrun game when I
Yeah,
took a crack at it, so I'll come back someday because it was fun and I'd like to improve that. So, yeah.
I am gonna take you up on that. Now you've said
I
it.
don't know. Well, I've been planning on
I
it,
do not.
but I don't know when that would
Just so you
be.
know,
But
I don't forget these things.
listen, it's been on my list. It will happen. I don't know when because I have so much shit to do in other games, but
Yeah,
I want to. So,
no, I totally get you. I have so
because
many bucket list items that I know I will probably never get to them, but I still put them on there. And then I make the mistake of telling people about them.
mhm. Yeah, I mean, the backlog just grows ever larger for many things in life,
Hmm.
but
Yeah.
we'll get there eventually, hopefully. I won't promise it, but I'd be shocked if I never did because it was fun and I lost so much time at the end. Ugh.
That's a good motivator. If you know big time save at the end. I
26
have,
someday.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think you definitely have the right mindset and the right grind set for that. And the right kind of like systematic understanding.
Yeah, it's at least like when you start out a fairly simple run to learn. It's only when you get to like world record level that it's like all these super intricate details that make it a little more difficult. But at the level I'm at,
Hmm.
it's pretty like it's kind of like Mario 1 in that way where if you're just starting out, you don't have to do any of the frame perfect bullshit. It's like nice
Yeah.
smooth sailing for a little while. So,
But that's what I mean. Like I think that kind of or that part of the skill set is transferable. That you just
mhm.
understand on a deeper level what technically has to happen, and just the experience that you also know practice will get you there. I think that
Yeah,
helps a lot.
of course. And now that there's a nice practice ROM, makes life so much
Yes,
easier. And it does work on the SD to SNES Super Game Boy 2 thing. So, always good.
very good.
But yeah, with that, I think we're done here. So, I'd like to thank everyone for watching, and you know what to do. Follow the guest and me as you do. You know, always a good time. I don't know. I'm really bad at ending stuff, but you know.
Just cut it out as soon as it gets
Goodbye.
awkward.
No, leave now. But yeah, no, yeah. Thanks for being on. Of course. I'll have all your links in the YouTube description. They were on stream. You can all see them right there, so you know what to do. There's mine. You know what to do.
Yeah.
And see you next week. So, I
Bye
have it
bye
all
from
ready
me
for
as
next
well.
week. So, yes, thank you everyone for watching and take care.